Hi, thank you for joining my CSR communication series that I run on my blog Introscope. This is a long-running series, and I to thought leaders about how they see the role of communication playing out in the so to speak. So thank you again for taking the time. Before we start, it'll be great if you could
Pleasure.
introduce to our viewers. I know you have also spent a lot of time in the communication domain, and therefore you straddle both worlds and you know a lot about it. And I'm sure there's a lot to gain from.
My pleasure, Ansu, and thanks a lot for having me on this talk. Uh, I'm Sangeeta Robinson. I head inclusion and sustainability at PVR Cinemas. I have a unique arrangement with them, which also allows me to independently consult on both sustainability and inclusion, as long as, of course, there's no conflict of interest.
Okay.
So I started my career as a communications person, and that's what I'm qualified for. Somewhere along the way, I was wearing double hats, like many of us comms people
Great.
do. But then the pull towards sustainability kind of was more attractive, and that's when I made a complete shift in 2013. And I enjoy doing this much more than writing press releases. So, nevertheless, I still like the internal communications piece. So I've retained that as part of my portfolio.
Okay, great. And I know that you've also co-authoring a handbook on CSR, and you're certified on the sustainability side of things. Is that right?
Yeah. So when I did the move, I mean, when I was wearing two hats, I realized that I was actually, on. There was a lot I wanted to build on the sustainability side of things.
Hmm.
So I'm an assessor with CIITC Center of Excellence since 2014.
Hmm.
I've done my GRI certification on G4 guidelines. In fact, I think I need to upgrade them to standards now.
Hmm.
What I'm working on right now with the Sherpa Sustainability Institute is a set of corporate guidebooks, 17 guidebooks, one on each SDG.
Got it.
This is a global project that's been done by Sherpa Sustainability Institute, and there are people from across the globe who are working together.
Hmm.
I'm co-authoring SDG 8.5 right now, because that's what talks about inclusive employment,
Hmm.
and I might be able to get a PVR case study into.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. Cool. So let me begin by asking the first question. So how do you define CSR or sustainability, and what does it really mean for your organization? Why is it so important?
So, I think, and like I've said it in my, you know, in the Q&A that you shared with me earlier too, there are two perspectives here.
Hmm.
So my learning and my understanding of CSR and sustainability is what I imbibed in the Tata Group.
Hmm.
So having said that, I would so there are two hats, and then therefore there are two perspectives.
Hmm.
The perspective that I see in PVR is, well, PVR was one, definitely did not wait for the compliance, because the CSR wing, which is PVR Nest,
Hmm.
has been in existence almost as long as the business has been into existence. So
Okay.
that's the ethos that comes from the family. So they
Hmm.
just felt that since they were doing well, they should give back to society. And the area that
Right.
we looked at there was children at risk,
Hmm.
essentially.
Hmm.
I head business sustainability, and therein some of it got pushed by legislation, which is
Hmm.
no plastics and things like that. But
Right.
I must say that the family in business has been very futuristic in understanding that there is a need out there,
Hmm.
where you're not being able to because of constraints of structure, technology, etc., you are
Hmm.
not able to reach out to as many people as you would like to, and
Right.
as many people who would like to come and watch films in your cinemas.
mm,
So this started, I think, late 2017 before I joined, because that's
mm,
when uh, their mother is elderly and she couldn't reach the theater, and she was limited to
mm,
say just a Rivoli and the accessible ones, which sometimes
mm.
were not the most premium ones.
Right.
And that's when they realized that they needed somebody to come in and actually relook at how cinemas were being designed and how
Mm,
how we could make them accessible. So
mm,
from that perspective, I think very futuristic, and also because the perspective comes from the fact that PVR is patterned on the best in global cinema. So and
mm.
that's where the accessibility piece came in. Last 2.5 years I've spent in making 50 plus. Well, another 32 would have been accessible by before lockdown had my consignment come in a little earlier. But
Yeah.
about 32 stair lifts imported from Europe are sitting in the warehouse, and I can't
Oh, okay.
install them.
Okay.
So we announced the first 50 accessible cinemas in 2018 December.
Mm,
And subsequently, of course, this was the physical part, and then one would realize that there was a lot more to it.
mm,
There was the vision part and there was the hearing impaired part. So we've looked at web accessibility, we've looked at, you know, uh, allowing audio description through this thing. Plus, what I did not realize was that there would be a lot of policy advocacy that I'd end up doing,
mm.
because it's okay to say cinemas are accessible, but your content is not accessible.
Right.
Films don't come with audio description and captioning, and thereby
Mm,
there's a lot of advocacy that I've done on that piece,
mm.
and we actually succeeded to a great extent, because finally the government understands what needs to be done and they've started the process. So I'm hopeful that Indian cinema will also be totally accessible. So basically,
Fantastic.
I think a very long answer to your question, but yeah, what it means to uh, PBR is business sustainability. You cannot separate. I mean, and that's what I believe too. You cannot
Mm,
separate business and CSR from the business, because
mm.
as soon as you do that, you can ensure that it's going to be short-lived and your programs are going to last as long as the person who is passionate about them lasts. And when the next person comes in, they go right out of the window and get replaced by something completely different. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
your CSR strategy has to be knitted in with your business philosophy.
Fantastic. And so, if you can tell me about, how does your organization communicate CSR both internally to employees and externally, and what are some of the techniques, methods, channels, resources that you all use?
Here again, two hats.
Mm,
So basically, I would write. So right now, as far as PBR is concerned, the essential way in which the company communicates about CSR and sustainability is through media. Uh, I would imagine I would like to have a lot more internal communications
mm,
with employees, because coming from the Tata stable,
mm.
the employee involvement and the employee connect and the employee engagement is extremely important.
True.
So that I think is lacking, and I would ideally like to think, but since I was so completely focused on getting things on ground,
Mm,
um, so that piece hasn't happened as much as I would like it to happen. Although we
mm,
do have an intranet, and I have put updates on the intranet,
mm,
but I think that's so there are two hats again. So
mm,
ideally, how I would like to communicate CSR sustainability is in a three tiered kind of thing. Internal communications, like I said, it's very important. I would ideally like to engage employees and even families
mm,
into programs that a company is committed towards,
mm,
thereby building a lot of pride in association and brand and connect with the organization. There are studies that have proven that what keeps the employees back is not necessarily always the monetary
mm.
compensation. There are a
That's
lot
true.
of more things that and TCS was a perfect example at a point of time that the IT sector was seeing a lot of attrition, and
Hmm.
despite being the worst paymasters, they had the lowest attrition.
Right.
So, I don't know whether that's still true, but 2009-10 is what I'm talking about.
Got it.
In terms of and of course, the next level is stakeholder communication, which I
Hmm.
personally think my other hat, my consultant hat, says
Right.
that is extremely important across stakeholders. So whether it's influencing your vendors,
Hmm.
suppliers to be responsible in their business, because that's what an organization as large a large organization can do, because they can
Hmm.
influence the entire ecosystem to be
Right.
sustainable and responsible. Then, of course, a very critical area which is of late becoming very visible is the behavior
Hmm.
change communication.
Right.
Because you can have a program, you can build toilets, but unless you know how to, you get people to use them, and the only
Correct.
way to get them to use them is communicating correctly.
Hmm.
In fact, I do a lot. Like I said, I'm assessor with CII ITC Center of Excellence of
Hmm.
Sustainability, and
Hmm.
I was assessing Toyota and some time back, and their sanitation project has been humongously successful only because they concentrated almost as much on the behavior change communication as they did on building the toilets themselves.
Got it.
So so
Got it.
so I would say that communication is a strategically important part of sustainability and getting
Fantastic.
it right.
Great. Yeah, that's a great way of looking at sustainability. So, if I were to ask you, I know you may have a dedicated team, but I'm more interested in what kind of skills do you think are required for this kind of role? And what are the skills that the company really expects sustainability people or people with communication and CSR to have?
From the communication perspective,
No,
uh,
from the CSR perspective,
both.
because of course,
Well, I
that.
think, yeah, from both. I think it's very important to understand how you're perceived as by various stakeholders.
Hmm.
So usually, what happens, and very commonly you'll see, not taking away from any CSR professional,
Hmm.
but there's a very inward-looking attitude.
Right.
And then if you do look out, you just look at the community you're serving. You're not realizing that there are a lot of other people who are looking at you as well, and a
Right.
lot of influence that you can create. So
Hmm.
basically, I think what's lacking, and I would say not just among CSR, but I think a lot of comms as well,
Hmm.
where you have a kind of a myopic view to things. So unless you can look at yourself from a 360-degree angle
Hmm.
and be able to see how various people, publics are seeing us, and how we can use the right kind of communication to be able to position ourselves the way we would like ourselves positioned, as
Hmm.
well as what we would like communicated. So,
Right.
for example, if I'm talking to for and thereby the kind of tools you're using.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'll just like to give an example here. I was with Tata Power Delhi Distribution, handling both CSR and comms.
Right.
And when I don't know what part of you stay in, you don't stay in NCR, right?
No, I
Okay,
stay in
so
Bangalore.
yeah, so those who do stay in NCR and particularly Delhi and Northwest, they know the difference post privatization of distribution of electricity and pre
Hmm.
privatization. So
Hmm.
basically, when Tata Power Delhi Distribution took over distribution, the
Hmm.
losses, the aggregate technical and commercial losses was at something like 56%,
Oh, okay.
just by virtue of and most of it was on account of theft.
Hmm.
So, and at the same time, one did not want, so one did not want to look at like, because as it is, there was so much of negative that, private companies coming in and they're going to fleece us, and this is going to
Hmm.
happen and that is going to happen.
Right.
So basically, of course, there were two chunks of theft as well. So there was the rich guys who were stealing, and then there were the poor juggi walas who were stealing
Hmm.
with that makeshift kind of arrangement. That was
Hmm.
dangerous as well. And from a data perspective, it was as much a safety hazard as it was a commercial loss,
Exactly.
and which was equally important.
Hmm.
So the kind of communication we did there was, I mean, behavior. I did not know the term behavior then as behavior change communication, but that's exactly what we did. Because
Mm,
DERC, the regulator, came out with a low cost scheme, and
mm,
the other two companies on this side of the city, which were not owned by the Tata Group, had a coercive method of thing, and we had more of a developmental kind of caring method that we used an NGO to do
mm,
to the people and so on and so forth. And it was a one-on-one communication, we built trust.
right.
And within the first 3 months of the rollout of that plan, we were able to convert almost 40 to 50% of the Jugi clusters to the paid, which was
Okay,
completely starkly different from what the other two companies were able to do at that point of time.
got
So,
it.
so basically, a lot of business, because there again, I say that
Oh, Sangeeta, I think I lost you for a minute. Yeah, but you can continue.
yeah. So there was a call. Yeah. So there again, I say that sustainability and business cannot be separated, and there are very many instances where one has been able to use CSR tools and techniques to be able to solve business problems, and
Got
this
it.
was a perfect one that example that I can say.
Fantastic. And so I know there are budgets, but I'm more interested in how, where are your energies diverted to? Which are the focus areas when it comes to CSR communication? Where do you invest your most effort on? So that's really what I'm interested in. If you could share something on those lines.
Yes, this is a slightly tricky one because I'll just explain to you the construct of
Mm,
how PBR is structured.
mm,
So there is the foundation, the trust, which
correct.
is headed by Deepa Menon, who heads communications as well.
Okay.
And so the trust is separate, and what I do is separate.
Okay.
My part is integrated with the business operations.
Okay.
So be it the kind of material that we use for the containers and
Right.
the elimination of plastic and the replacement with biodegradable material and this and that, plus the initiatives that we are undertaking on water and electricity. So that my piece is more to do with um, uh, the business, the running of the business itself.
Sure.
Deepa heads things. I would say that there isn't a separate budget for CSR
Right.
communication or sustainability
Okay.
communication per se. Uh, but for example, when we launched 50 cinemas, so this was developmental communication. However,
Mm,
since it's business sustainability, so funds do flow out, but there's nothing earmarked specifically for CSR and sustainability communication.
okay. Got it. Cool. So, I mean, if you could reflect on, what is the one trend that you notice from a CSR perspective that, which you feel is really important in the current stage where we are? I think that comes
Definitely,
down.
uh, definitely behavior change communication, because I think a project is incomplete if you are not reaching out to the audiences and being able to communicate what you're doing something for.
Mm,
And I've seen tangible instances of this happening where the project itself may not be too great, but
mm,
because the company has invested so heavily on the communication piece, they've been able to get results far better.
mm,
And sanitation to me was an ideal example because so many companies were getting into sanitation at the same
yeah,
time, and I
correct.
was assessing two or three at the same in a year, and
Mm,
there I could still see the stark difference of
mm,
a company which has spent more on building toilets
mm,
and barely anything on communication vis-a-vis another company which has probably spent almost an equal amount on the communication piece and been able to do it so well.
mm,
It was so brilliantly done that the maintenance of the toilets in schools. So
mm,
they did
mm.
Toyota had
Yes,
it only in schools, and the
right.
maintenance of the toilets in school was actually taken care of by the children. And it
Oh,
was
wow.
something as simple as leave the toilet as you would like to see it when you come back. So
Mm.
every child, after using it, cleaned. We're not asking them to clean the toilet. We're just saying
Yeah.
leave it as you would like it to be when you come next.
Mm.
And it's very frankly, it's somebody just applied a little bit of thing, and they created a nice little booklet which was
Mm.
ABC of sanitation or something.
Mm. Mm.
And I would really consider. In fact, later I when in my consultancy phase, we were doing a sanitation handbook with the thing,
Mm.
and I put that as a case study because
Mm.
that's a perfect case study. Because I've seen PSUs and large companies building toilets and they're being kept locked. They're opened
Mm.
only when visitors
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so basically, so
Yeah.
basically, the behavior in itself, because
Yeah.
a section of society which has been used to open defecation for so long, one
Mm.
getting them. I mean, initially that was a big mindset issue
Mm.
that people
Mm.
had, that closed environment, etc., etc., unhygienic, and all kinds of things.
Mm.
You had to hear the kind of stories that were coming out. And here is an organization that is building the entire program on the premise of
Mm.
this thing of being able to build that culture in among children. And believe you me,
Mm.
when children
Yeah.
absorb something, they take it home as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
I
a
would
great,
I
great
would imagine
step.
I would imagine behavior change communication is the differentiator in CSR.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think what you're referring to is more about the psychology of the mind and trying to get people convinced about what to know. Great. I mean,
And
so
in
if you
fact,
could, yeah.
the tag of toilets being dirty
Mm.
in itself is something very Indian.
Mm. That's true.
So,
Yeah.
and that they're dirty because we leave them dirty.
Mm.
So if we leave them clean, they'll be clean for us the next time we come.
That's true.
Something as simple as that.
So the next question I had was, if you could reflect on a campaign, if you could describe a campaign that you personally worked on, it could need not be in the current organization, any other organization, where you were personally proud of, and what was the challenge, what was the opportunity, what was the impact that you made? If you could reflect on that.
Actually, it is this campaign is not a CSR campaign, but it is more okay. So one, of course, the one I spoke about, I was particularly proud of that, the Tata Power Daily Distribution campaign, because that's completely in that domain of being able to. It did multiple things.
Right.
It did a CSR because it was also. I mean, it did a CSR in the sense that it. Uh, ensured safety for people living in the slums.
Mm.
Also shedding a bad practice of theft.
Mm.
So in terms of should I say, upgrading the society in terms of ethical behaviors.
Right.
From a perspective of business, yes, well, it brought in some revenue. I wouldn't say, because you see, I mean, numbers, yes, but frankly, this scheme that DERC brought out, it was 266 rupees per connection for two tube lights and two fans. And if you had to have a cooler, you will take another connection. One home was not allowed more than two connections, which meant that you could have a cooler, two fans, and something at this subsidized scheme of the government of India. So it was more of a well-being scheme than a revenue scheme.
Right.
However, from a discounts point of view, it was at least reducing losses, because if you're not earning much, you were at
Yeah.
least not losing as much as you were losing.
Mm.
So that having been said, from a because once we entered those societies, and I think it didn't end there, because we supplemented it with vocational training. Many of the youths went and became electricians. So that was the first connect that they had with Tata Power Daily Distribution. And it doesn't mean to say that once we finished doing what we had to do, we kind of brushed off our thing and walked off, because the
Mm.
community remained with us. And some of those boys became electricians. There were some big various vocational training that happened, and so on and so forth. So that one, of course, the trust in the company, and the relationship with the company got built, which to my mind is one of the key things that CSR does,
Mm.
because it helps you build healthy relationships among the people that you're operating, which is very significant, because tomorrow when you are going to be faced with certain business challenges, these are
Mm.
the people who would think. And then paying a bill for electricity, which was earlier in Delhi seemed like who pays a bill for electricity sort of a thing. The
Mm.
whole culture, it was a cultural change that was brought about, which I think is which also is great amount of CSR, because considering that as a nation we like to at the drop of a hat subvent and kind of avoid rules, regulations, and anything that uh, put some kind of structure to behavior. So I think that was one of the best campaigns. The other one that is not a CSR campaign, but was at Docomo, where we had this. Um, uh, it was the external campaign was something to do with do more or something like that. I'm forgetting what it was. But there, what we did was we had an internal communication campaign, which
Mm.
motivated employees to be able to live up to the brand promise that Docomo was giving to the customers. So
Mm.
uh, what I'm trying to reiterate here is that nothing in an organization is disconnected or is seen from the rest. I
Mm.
see many organizations where, and that is something I've been also trying to put right here in PVR. CSR seems to be a separate animal.
Mm.
So you see, except for a few people who are really interested, people aren't. I mean, CSR is something that somebody else does,
Yeah.
and mostly it's like pata nahi wo kuch karte hain, that kind of a thing. So I'm very uncomfortable with that, because
Yeah.
I believe that something that an activity of an organization that can build so much of internal brand equity,
Mm.
external is apart. But
Mm.
I mean, when I announced the 50 cinemas being accessible,
Mm. Mm.
on a single day, the share price of PVR rose by 3 to 4%.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting.
So if that's the kind of effect it can have on the investor community,
Mm.
imagine what kind of effect it should be able to have on your employees.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think Indian companies are missing out on a huge opportunity of
Mm.
being able to actually in cash,
Mm.
on the equity that one can earn from CSR.
Got it. Great. I mean, great point. And just switching gears in terms of your wealth of experience and your experiences both in comms and CSR, what's your advice for CSR professionals in terms of how they can communicate more effectively?
I think the first thing they need to understand is, that their stakeholders are not just the community and your CSR department. Your community is everyone out there who, for a listed company, everyone out there who comes in contact, and even for a non-listed company, your employees, your prospective employees, your vendors, your suppliers, everyone is a community, and I would say unbox yourself,
Yeah.
understand what your business does, understand think and get large. I mean, CSR,
Mhm.
I'm sick of seeing CSR as in one corner.
Got it. Great point. And the other question was related to people who want to join this domain, because in India now CSR is becoming bigger because of the government act and all that. So, what's your advice for youngsters who want to make a mark in this domain? What do you recommend for them?
Well, same thing. Have a large perspective, because if you have a wider perspective, I think frankly, I wouldn't even, if I were to hire people, I wouldn't even look at CSR qualifications. I would look at good project management as qualification, because to me, it doesn't matter whether a person is an MSW or whatever else. If
Mm.
you can't take a project from zero to finish and be able to come back and tell me what the ROI is, I don't think that's good business, and I don't think that's good CSR either, because
Got it.
CSR does have the word corporate there, and doing charity is one thing where the Bible says that the left hand should know what the right hand is giving, etc., etc. But in a company, definitely you should know what you're giving, and you should also know what is coming back
Right.
in different forms of benefit to the organization.
Great, great point. So in closing, just wanted to ask you, what is your recommendation for any organizations who want to get better with CSR communications? Any last
Uh,
piece of
what
advice?
I'm just telling you was that I am also doing a Master Black Belt Six Sigma, which is a certification in continual improvement and sustainability, which is a
Got it.
new concept which has been patented on the Six Sigma patent by Sherpa Sustainability Institute.
Sure.
And I think you've never really arrived there.
Okay.
You are on a continuous journey. This is like quality, you just keep improving. So there is, if you are tatas, you can still go think. If you're an organization that's just starting and fledgling, think there's a long way to go and so much more to do. So you never really arrive there, because I think that's where a lot of people who and large companies that have done great this thing on CSR think that they've just about arrived, because I believe, and that's what continual improvement concept is about, that
Right.
there's always scope for improvement, and there's also always scope to do more.
Fantastic. These have been great insights, Sangeeta. I really appreciate you taking
Thank
the
you.
time to share your thoughts and perspectives. I'm sure it'll be extremely valuable for all our viewers.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.